And the first item, comments, suggestions, petitions by residents in attendance regarding items not on the agenda. Are there any?
There are none.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Carra. And apologize for participating remotely today. I'm traveling, so bear with me. Moving on to item number 3, the monthly fire department report.
Good evening, Steve Pelna, Fire Chief. Sheila, you got a nice sunny behind you there, right? You got an aura behind you. 100 incidents for the month of February. Over 3,000 hours of training already this year, so we're well on our way. Our volunteers are always out there training. Biggest significant incident that I want to talk about is on February 20th. We had a fire and apartment building on West Minor Street. Unfortunately, that was intentionally set. There were six apartments in there, so a significant amount of people at risk in that situation. But luckily, Chief Moorhead's team, with their quick action, they were able to get the accused off the street within a short few hours after that. But tremendous effort by our police department, and we certainly assisted them with the preservation of the scene along with the county fire marshals. But scary situation definitely there that put a lot of people at risk, our neighbors in the borough here. But again, quick action. I can't applaud Sergeant McFarland and his team, that platoon, on that night, their quick action. Any questions?
No questions for me.
All right, thanks.
No questions. Thanks, Chief Pelna.
Thank you.
Thank you for your team's work as well as the police department.
Of course.
Okay, if there's nothing else for the fire department, we'll move on to the police department. Chief Moorhead.
Good evening, Ms. Dorsey, rest of Public Safety Committee. Jim Moorhead, Chief of Police. For the month of February, the police department responded to 3,274 calls for service, of which 2,518 of those were in the borough. The only crime of note that I wanted to discuss tonight, because I know we have a longer discussion coming up, and Chief Pelna stole my thunder. So an arson occurred in the month of February. Fire department's quick response. Now I got to give him praise because he gave me praise. Now the fire department did a phenomenal job, but yes, the officers' investigative skills kicked in high gear. They had the subject in custody within an hour and a half. So great investigation on their part. We have an arrest, we have a confession and everything. So thankfully no one was hurt, but as Chief pointed out, it certainly had the potential. And I'll take any of your questions.
No questions.
I do
Thank
want to
you.
take this time to say thank you for your work in the schools. I have spoken with some of the children and they are rather enthusiastic. So thank you.
That's great. Yeah, the SRO program is off to a rapid start. It's amazing the relationships that Officer Donkin's already building, and it's getting high praise. I appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, great work, Chief. Thank you. We'll move on to EMS report. Chief Brogan.
Good evening, Chaz Bergen, EMS Chief from Good Fellowship Ambulance. I'll be quick. It's not lost on me that all these folks are here to not see ambulance data, so I'll be as quick as possible. So Good Fellowship responded to 570 total calls last month, 173 of which were in Westchester Borough. Interestingly enough, you can see it's already trending ahead of last year. Last year was a record-setting year for us, and we're already seeing that again this year. So we'll see if that trend continues. But really nothing else extraordinary on the report unless you have any questions. Just a couple things I want to mention here. We did announce our new executive director. It's Tom Wilcox. Tom is actually an attorney and a long history of running nonprofits and businesses. So his first day is Monday, and hopefully you'll see him here next month to introduce himself. So One other acknowledgement I want to make, Haven Behavioral Health is in the process of renovating 400 East Marshall Street as a behavioral health hospital. Definitely a much needed resource coming to our community. I just want to acknowledge them, their organization, and their CEO, Jeff Hunt. He's been a wonderful partner. He's been communicating all along, and he's really interested in being part of this community. So I just want to acknowledge Jeff and Haven, and there'll be a welcome resource for us. So that's all I have.
Thanks, Chief Brogan. Any questions, comments?
None here.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And moving on to item number 3D, discuss traffic issues on Price Street. And I'm going to ask Chief Moorhead to help lead the conversation since I'm not in the room.
Thank you, Ms. Dorsey. Jim Moorhead, Chief of Police. I think the best way to break this down, tonight we're going to be discussing traffic concerns on Price Street, specifically at the intersection of Brandywine Street. The police department did study this intersection in March of 2022. We have an opinion, but I'd like to let the residents of Price Street speak if they wish first. Mr. Vitolo and Ms. Stanton are here. And then also a third leg to this conversation is going to be associates from Remington and Vernick Engineers, specifically Kelly Goff and her associate who are here tonight that did a traffic study as well on Price and Brandywine Streets. So are you good with that, Ms. Stanton? Okay. All right. So we'll let Ms. Stanton go, and then I can kind of tie things up at the end and let you know where the police department stands, but the residents of Price Street should be heard. So
Thanks, Chief.
Hi, I'm Patty Stanton. I'm a resident of Price Street. We are here to, we know there's a lot going on with this issue. And Vince is going to cover some of the things, but I just wanted to do an intro. I am a resident of Price Street. We're here to ask the Public Safety and Quality of Life Committee to support our petition for a multi-way stop at Price and Brandywine. We have broad support from the neighborhood. A number of our neighbors are here, and we'll hear from some others. So on Price, we're living with the problems of traffic volume, noise, motorist behavior, pedestrian and cyclist safety, and motorist safety, actually. A number of our residents talked about feeling unsafe at that intersection. The livability of Price Street and the surrounding neighborhood is compromised by too heavy a focus on the automobile, as opposed to pedestrians and cyclists. I don't know if people realize this, but nearly approximately 6,500 vehicles a day pass over Price Street, which is our neighborhood. That's our neighborhood. We live there, we breathe there, and we're trying to make it a livable place. And we feel that this number will only grow as the development of not just things in our borough, but outside the borough. A recent study that was conducted for the borough supports taking action based on traffic volumes and speeding on Price. The results of the study, which we distributed to our residents, come as no surprise to the people who live on Price Street day in, day out. And we are really hoping that the committee will support our work with us to change this situation. We know we are up against state regulations, but we believe that with your help, these are solvable problems. We are joining activists in this state and across the country to reclaim neighborhoods. Price Street is a part of a state road system. Everyone knows that. And as such, it's actually governed by federal regulations, something called the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. This manual is currently being revised, and those of us who are involved in that are hoping that it will be more reflective of 21st century values, which include neighborhood level concerns like we're bringing to you tonight. The manual has been used for years to subordinate the safety of pedestrians and cyclists to the all-encompassing focus on automobiles. Westchester is a great place to live and to work, And we would like Price Street to be a part of that. And in order to be a part of that, we hope that you will work with us to change the situation and partially restore it, also preserve the beauty of our neighborhood and the livability of our neighborhood. I just wanted to share an anecdote, which is that just 2 nights ago at dusk, I was walking in the neighborhood. I was in the crosswalk. The vehicle that was approaching when I entered the crosswalk had not even gotten to Everhart. They were going northbound. Before I was out of the intersection, I was having to run because this vehicle made absolutely no attempt to slow down, definitely saw me, made eye contact with me. And this is not a one-off. This is something that we pedestrians over there on Pike Street deal with quite regularly. So that's my story. I would like to introduce to you Vince Patola to come on up and add a little more detail to our conversation. Thank you very much for your attention. Appreciate being here.
Thank you.
Hello. Thank you for the opportunity that you are giving the residents of Price Street to come and voice their concerns about our current situation there. I've lived in the borough of Westchester for many, many years, so originally on Minor Street, and then we moved to Price Street in much calmer days, if you will. And we've lived in our present residence since the late 1980s, actually. I chaired an ad hoc traffic committee years and years ago, at which point we gave presentations to about 8 or 9 different municipalities regarding the designation of Route 100 to a minor state route. That took a lot of work, a lot of time, but the benefits were substantial, as we've seen over the years, a substantial reduction in the number of 18-wheelers or very large tractor trailers coming through town, which would do so all day and all night. So in terms of moving mountains, that was a big mountain. To get PennDOT to actually take action on something like that required consensus, it required regional efforts, and some really good representation at the state level, which we had. The petition for a four-way stop is a really difficult thing. I mean, it's difficult to get it done, as Patty clearly pointed out. But I deal with federal regulations. I deal with federal hazardous materials regulations. It's one of my areas of expertise. I produce a technical journal that is read by the federal government. It's read by major chemical and pharmaceutical companies and state departments of transportation. So my orientation is safety. I'm a safety professional. And so I wouldn't be up here just for the hell of it. I'm up here because I see or sense that we have a problem that's only going to continue to get worse. We think in terms of maintaining an equivalent or an improved standard of safety when we look at things like packaging regulations, highway routes for hazardous materials movements, et cetera, okay? That's the view I'm taking of this situation. We're probably going to get a lot of pushback from PennDOT on this, but my view, just through constant observation of that intersection, is that we could maintain an equivalent level of safety and definitely improve the level of safety through the installation of a four-way stop intersection. The other big consideration too is that there is motorist confusion. So you have a four-way stop at the intersection of Bradford and Price and a four-way stop at the intersection of Wayne and Price, which took us a few years to get, but we got it. But at Brandywine and Price, there is definitely motorist confusion. You can see them occasionally stopping for residents that are attempting to cross, and sometimes, as Patty indicated, they're just going to ignore you. So we think, if you also look at the stop sign situation in the borough, we have a lot of stop signs. There's no question about that. Unfortunately, we have them in more places where we don't need them than where we do need them, in my view. We meet some of the criteria, okay, for this. I'm not so sure we meet the five accident requirement within a 12-month period. I think the study pointed out that we probably did not. But we do meet some of that criteria, such as our volumes, sightline distances, and pedestrian traffic. Um, we note that in the case of Minor Street, and we fully supported the installation of those stop signs on Minor Street because it is heavily residential and there are quite a few pedestrians. They were able to install those stop signs without necessarily meeting the accident warrants that PennDOT specifies. They instead did rely upon sightline distance and pedestrian safety. Price Street was built, it was rebuilt years ago, probably before the time of many of us here, because the road was in bad shape. There was no question about that. But they applied standards that they would apply to Route 202, not to necessarily a residential neighborhood. So they widened the road. There was talk that they wanted to take all the trees down on Price Street, which fortunately did not happen. They could have designed it differently. Okay, they could have retained the existing width of the road. They could have bulbed the intersections and done other things to essentially calm the resulting traffic or the traffic that was going to result. They did not do that. Even when we put handicap access corners in on all the intersections, there was an opportunity there to use federal funding to basically bulb those intersections or state funding, and we did not do that. It was a missed opportunity. Our community is a little different than the north side, okay? We have Westchester University, okay? And Westchester University generates a tremendous amount of traffic, okay? And in association with that traffic is something we all really dislike, and that's vehicular noise, okay? I was reading some studies before I came over here on the potential health impacts of excessive noises on residential neighborhoods, and it's not good. And it's really worth looking into. As a matter of fact, next week, I'll be conducting some additional research into that, and I will send some findings over to you, and I'll cite those findings. Not to get political here, but I have to, because unfortunately, things evolve. Everything's political, right? Everything is political, right? And historical decisions by East Bradford and Westchester University not to improve Tiger Road and the University Access Road have really created a lot of our problems in the borough. They really have. I support in these environmental causes. I think that Chester County is probably, it's got some big issues to deal with from the standpoint of preservation of open space and continued development. But unfortunately, I don't think the decisions to keep that road closed were wisely made. So essentially, what we're facing here is, a political problem. That by keeping those roads closed, and East Bradford was a very big part of that because I was a part of that process years ago to try to get it open. They essentially have made judgment on our community, on our neighborhood, and it's not right. As a matter of fact, it's really immoral. Okay, and they knew. As a matter of fact, I know that Westchester University had a very large interest and did communicate with East Bradford Township on the Darlington Ridge development out at Tighe Road. So they were very concerned that Toll Brothers might in fact improve Tighe Road. As it turns out, Tighe Road is not going to be improved. Toll Brothers will not pay the money, and I'm certain that East Bradford doesn't want to do it. So we got a situation essentially where the residents have been boxed in, okay? And okay, we cry uncle, we lost, all right? Okay, so the borough, in my view, has got to take whatever steps it needs to preserve its communities, the integrity of its neighborhoods, and its beautiful historical character. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stanton and Mr. Vitolo. Who was talking?
That was me, Chief. Go ahead. I'm
ahead.
sorry.
Oh, okay.
No,
Ms. Goff, will you?
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to review some of the main points in the study that was released earlier this month. We reviewed speed data that was collected in March of 2022. The speed data was collected on Price Street. The average northbound speed was 29 miles per hour, and the 85th percentile speed northbound was 33. For the southbound, the average speed was 31 miles per hour, and the 85th percentile was 36 miles per hour. PennDOT guidelines for speed limits basically specifies that the 85th percentile speed should be within 5 miles per hour of the posted speed limit. There's also other guidelines that specify that if the speed limit is over, or the speed collected is over 10 miles per hour over the posted speed limit, that it would be enforceable in the court of law. So I just wanted to go over a few low-cost upgrades that can be implemented in a timely fashion if the borough did wish to bring that average speed limit and the 85th percentile speed limit closer to within that 5 mile per hour guideline. So you can install some low-cost signs, including a display radar sign, one of those signs that basically when you drive through, your speed shows up on the screen. Those are highly effective. There's also various striping that you can implement, such as the marked crosswalks. The piano key type crosswalks are highly effective. They're more visible. You can install one of those portable state law stop for pedestrians in the middle of the crosswalks. That tends to slow vehicles down as well. You can restripe some of the key intersections. Now, I did note here that police department enforcement can be implemented, but as I mentioned before, unless it's over 10 miles per hour, it may not be enforceable. So I know that there's a couple of residents that's hoping to get stop signs along this road. I do want to reiterate that this is a state route. Any changes along this road, we would have to consult with PennDOT and they have to agree with it. There's various warrants that need to be met in order to install stop signs along this road. You cannot use stop signs as a vehicle to reduce speed. There's other reasons to install stop signs, and the warrants include the crash data within a 12-month period, the amount of vehicles, the vehicle volume going through this area, the combined vehicular, pedestrian, and bicycle volume going through this area, as well as the road geometry. So you cannot install stop signs just to reduce speed. And any revisions that you do make to this road, we would have to consult PennDOT. So if you have any questions, public or Sheila or Nick, please let me know.
Stop signs to safe passage across the street.
So you could.
Can we ask whoever's speaking to come to the mic, please?
I'm John Nolan. I'm a resident of Price Street, and thank you all for allowing me to speak for a second, and thank you for all you do for the borough. Yeah, I understand, and I've heard that stop signs are not deemed as appropriate to slow down traffic. I'm not sure I believe that, but I'm fine. There must be data and stats and all that, and that's great. I appreciate science. But what we're talking about here today is crossing the street. You know, how to get from point A to point B. I mean, I live right there. I'd like to cross the street right there so I can go to Everhart Park. That's the route. And I don't feel safe. And a lot of the neighbors don't feel safe across the street. So maybe it won't slow down traffic, but maybe it'll make the neighborhood a lot more livable and safe for pedestrians. So that's what we're talking about here. And we know that PennDOT would have to weigh in. We understand that. But we also know that with your support, that's more likely. Okay, so thank you.
So as I mentioned earlier, one of the warrants to have a stop sign in place, a four-way stop sign in place, is the amount of pedestrians and bicyclists going through that intersection.
My name's Diane. I live on Price Street. I'd like to point out that, as I'm sure everyone is aware, one of the things that we like about Westchester is that small town feel. The little houses on the streets, the nice roadways, the yards, and so forth. So you mentioned the amount of pedestrian traffic. Now, obviously, on those other streets, people like to walk all the time, but we're a little inhibited from even giving pedestrian traffic because the traffic goes so fast and there's no safe place to cross the street at that intersection. So I think that's something to consider. So.
two doors in from the intersection we're talking about. So I've heard some of the crashes. But what I want to say is I've heard at least 5 times as many near misses. You hear the screeching tires, the horns, the shouting, and you're just waiting for, and mostly it doesn't happen. But the near misses are frequent. I've lived there 30 years. They're becoming more frequent. I think that intersection is kind of unique for 2 reasons. On Price Street from High all the way to Bradford, every intersection has a stop sign or a stoplight. 4 ways, except Price and Brandywine. Then there's a 2-way stop sign, but not a 4-way. So people who are driving in that area get it in their head that every intersection has a 4-way stop sign. And I've seen more than once cars stop on Brandywine, look, say, oh, I'm next, pull out right in front of another car. That's when you get most of the near misses because a pattern has been established and Price and Brandywine has become an exception. And if you live there, you know it. If you're not familiar with the area, you don't know it. The other issue is coming down Price Street from High, people get to be in a hurry. There's a stop sign, stop sign, stop sign, stoplight. When they get to Wayne, if they're familiar with the road, it's open season. Boom. I've gotten to the point where I can turn on Brandywine to get into my parking space, but now I turn at Wayne because if there's someone behind me, they're in a real hurry once they get to Wayne Street because this is their time to catch up for lost time. So I think those 2 factors make that intersection even more of a risk than it would normally be. And I think it's getting worse. And normally I don't come to these meetings, I'm sorry to say. Thank you for your public service. I do value you. But I really felt very strongly that if someone got hurt or killed at that intersection, and I had a chance to say something and didn't, I would feel some responsibility. That's why I'm here tonight. I think this is really a big issue that needs to be taken seriously. It's getting worse. So thank you.
So my question to the engineering firm is, if you will 4-way stop intersection prevent future accidents? Not 100%, but generally speaking, would you say that the installation of a 4-way stop intersection at Brandywine could prevent future accidents and would have prevented the previous accidents that we've been able to document here? My other question is, why weren't any noise measurements? The noise levels on Price Street are extraordinary. We have not only is the roadway in really poor condition, but the speeds of the vehicles are contributing to a very, very high dB level. And these homes are all made out of stone. They're all built like 80, 90, 100 years ago. So that has to be taken into consideration. PennDOT is sensitive when it's building or widening roads like they did on 202 to the impact of noise on adjacent neighborhoods. They put up barriers. But as a PennDOT official told me, he was taking sound measurements from my front porch in the early 1990s, said, Vince, I'm sorry, but we can't put any barriers up here. But I know that this 102 dB level being generated by these trucks coming down your street is a real problem. That's what he told me. I mean, he wasn't being facetious. He said, basically, you have a noise problem, we can't do anything about it. So I think in terms of, measuring not just safety and preventing accidents and preventing particularly pedestrian incidents, that we have to take into consideration the harmful effects of excessive noise. And also the negative impact, and this is not your concern, of course, on property values, which will become an issue. Thank you.
I do want to mention that I did not have the crash data available to me at the time of this report, so I didn't review it.
Anyone else like to speak tonight? Yes, sir. Yep. You have to come up, sir. Is it hard for you to walk? Okay, I was going to bring the mic to you.
No,
Okay.
I'm fine, thank you. My name is Bob Marco. I live at the southeast corner of Price and Brandywine. And I would just like it to be known that when our 3 grandchildren that live locally visit, and oftentimes they ask us, my wife and I, to take them up to Everhart Park, we cannot safely cross Price Street. We have to be inconvenienced to walk down to the nearest stop sign, and then we have a chance. But if you talk about safety, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Ms. Dorsey, if I could just sum up.
Sure.
Thank,
Sure, Chief.
thank you to Ms. Stanton, Mr. Vitolo, the other residents of Price Street, Kelly Goff and her team who came out tonight. Ms. Stanton speaks for Price Street. She also speaks for Rosedale, for Ashbridge, for High Street. It is a borough-wide problem. We cannot put stop signs at every single intersection so that people can cross and slow people down. We respond to an average of 703 accidents in the borough each year. 703. In the last 6.5 years, we've seen 6 accidents at Price and Brandywine. Fortunately, none of those have resulted in injury. Not a single one. They've required towing, which then makes it a reportable accident compared to a non-reportable accident. Non-reportable accident being when both cars or a single car can drive away from the accident scene after a report is taken. Thankfully, nobody's been hurt. I do believe the residents that there have been plenty of near misses. We see them obviously everywhere. The police department supports the residents of Price Street for traffic calming measures. We're putting in a purchase order this very month for a new state-of-the-art signboard that can take our own personalized messaging, shoot radar, display speeds, and flash red and blue lights when somebody's going over the speed limit. My promise is that when that trailer comes in, the first place it's going is on Price Street, because that is where it belongs. So we are making efforts there. I do support Ms. Goff's, and I think even Mr. Vitolo brought this up, going with the piano board chevrons in the middle of the crosswalk at Price and Brandywine is going to be of some help. Yes, we can do increased enforcement. We're down there as much as we can. Borough residents need to realize that the west side of town, from Bradford Avenue to High Street, from Rosedale to Goshen Road, on a daily average, has 1.5 police officers in it at any given time. We are stretched. We're everywhere we can be, but Ms. Stanton's chief complaint is a complaint of this borough. When you close hospitals, ambulances are coming in the main arteries, including Price Street. Their family members going to the hospital are coming in Price Street. Southern Chester County is building leaps and bounds, and all of those people are coming into the county seat. So I just want to sum up that anything that goes forward to PennDOT is deserving. The thresholds of our traffic study do not support what's being asked tonight, but we fully support traffic calming. And I think that's the next step we need to take. But whatever way this goes, I hope Ms. Stanton, Mr. Vitolo, and the other residents get some response to PennDOT, because redesign improvements are all very needed in that area. We actually see more accidents at Price and Darlington Street than we do at Price and Brandywine. Unfortunately for the the one resident who spoke about taking his grandkids, unfortunately, you do have to walk one block east to get a stop sign in order to cross safely, as it's called. So again, we are here in support. We will continue to provide enforcement measures. We're making the purchase of that new speed sign. We'll hang a radar board on the street as well to help out. But at this point, the police department's opinion is that traffic calming measures are indeed warranted. But at this time, I cannot support stop signs unless PennDOT comes in and feels that that's the way to go.
Can I just ask you to repeat the number of accidents over the past year that were reportable and unreportable?
In 2023, we've had one reportable accident. In 2022, we had one reportable accident. In 2021, we had one reportable accident. In 2020, we had two reportable accidents. In 2019, we had one non-reportable accident. And in 2018 and 2017, which is as far as we did the study, we had no accidents.
And I have a couple of questions as well. So we talked about there was a four-way that was put in. I don't know if it was recently, but the most recent one that was put in, was that at Darlington? Where was that?
For Price Street?
Correct, yeah.
Darlington Street.
Wait, the Wayne.
oh, I'm
Darlington
sorry.
only has a two-way
Yep.
stop.
Thank you, Wayne
Right.
Street.
And when was that done at Wayne Street? Do we know?
That's going back about, yeah, I was going to say 10 years.
Okay. Do we know, I guess, like, to get to the heart of this question, like, what are the negative consequences of adding, because you're saying we can't add them everywhere. So if we could just identify those negative consequences for the record, I think that would be helpful. And then I don't know if it was a long time ago, if you're capable to expand on what made the situation at Wayne Street different from now.
Yeah, this is a better question for Lieutenant Daly, who does all the traffic engineering studies, or not engineering studies, but does all the traffic study work for the police department. But he has told me that we have as many, if not more, accidents in the borough at four-way stop intersections than we do uncontrolled intersections, where there might just be a north-south stop sign, but not an east-west. So accident data does not really change. People in the borough are in a hurry, and accidents happen, as reported, 703 average per year, 703. Additionally, traffic noise will increase because those vehicles that are traveling down Price Street will now come to a quick halt, increasing brake noise. They're going to speed away from the intersection and making additional engine noise. Possibility of even screeching of tires when they leave. We see increase in noise when people are stopping at and leaving from stop signs. It increases pollution because you have cars idling at those areas longer. And we have a problem in today's society where there is a huge level of impatience. So we can be in a lot of places, we cannot be everywhere. So those are just a couple of the negatives, Mr. Allen.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And I think it's hard. Okay, so like as I think about it, it's if we're experiencing the same level of accidents at either intersection, I mean, I'm kind of seeing, it sounds like the other negatives were generally quality of life as well, being like increase in noise and increase in pollution. And I'm sure we can, I'd be interested in following up with Lieutenant Daly as well on some of that stuff. And I think it's interesting because we had considered those two intersections on West Minor as well. And those, I know since I've been on council, were added. And I remember at the time TPD they were driving like back and forth over and over again, just testing how much time that would add to cross the borough on West Minor Street.
Minor Street's a little bit different because it's so narrow and there's cars parked on both sides, and the visibility is not there. When you add a four-way stop to an intersection like Brandywine and Price, they still have all that visibility, and they're going to, what we call it in the police world, California stop it, which is that slow roll and then keep going, because they have the visibility in their favor. And if you're driving west on Price Street or even coming east on Price Street in that 400, 500 block, 300 block, it's widened. So it does almost become like its own runway, which is why PennDOT needs to look at Price Street, because once it gets down into the 50 and the 100 block, it narrows in. Now we do see a huge increase in accidents in the 50 and 100, and probably 85% of them are mirror strikes because it's too thin, almost too thin in there, and people aren't paying attention. So we get a lot of mirror strike accidents down there in there.
Okay, I think that's good to know. So we have two-way stops at Darlington as well. Just I'm trying to get the whole picture there. I wrote way too much. Sorry. I think that's it. That's all I got for questions. Thank you.
Okay. Ms.
So,
Vaccaro?
Mr. Allen, I'm sorry if I could jump in here. One, I wanted to thank the residents, Mr. Vitalo, Ms. Goff, you, Chief Moorhead, for all of the information and sharing with council. It sounds like we can make some incremental changes to help with the speed that is occurring on Price Street to help slow folks down, make it a little bit safer. It sounds like if we want to make additional changes, there's additional work that we need to do. But at this time, the sign we're anticipating will be installed to slow down traffic. We talked about putting some crosswalks in and just some overall speed enforcement. So it sounds like, we have some initial plans or initial steps that we can take, and then, need to revisit this and determine what else we need to do. Because at this point, if I understood from the study, because it's a state road, there's much more involved with PennDOT. Is that correct?
Yes, with the exception that the residents of Price Street can still make a petition to PennDOT. Council could support those residents in their plea for help on Price Street as well. Yep.
So then just quickly, just for me, I think in terms of like the recommendations that we have right now, which are on the screen, like I think all of that is great. I support all of that 100%. For the four-way stop, I would be interested just moving forward and hearing, just with me following up with Lieutenant Daly, I think that would help me a lot just to get more of an understanding of the negative consequences of doing this. And then I know we said from Vernick that we didn't have the crash data yet when this was compiled. Is that correct? Is that something we're going to see an update with once that data is available to you? So once all that data is together and I get some follow-up with Daly, I think that's going to be, I think, a little more clarifying for me on the four-way stop issue.
Mhm.
But in terms of like what's on the screen right now, like I don't know why we wouldn't do any of that. I think that makes a lot of sense.
But those are the 6 accidents that I was talking about from 2017 to today.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
Now, I'm sorry, I'm jumping in. I have read the PennDOT warrant requirements, and they do not require reportable accidents. And I have
Any crash.
any crash, and I have some documentation from the police that says in the past 5 years there have been 20 accidents not reported. It goes on and on, but it doesn't give the dates. So That's why I'm not, I don't know. And we, of course, we need to get the full picture there. But what was done on Minor Street, putting those stop signs in and sort of, there's Minor and some on Darlington that have made a huge improvement, not only to pedestrian traffic, but also to vehicle traffic. I'm going to speak here. In our borough, I think it's really, really important. Consistency. I talk about consistency when we're talking about shutting down the streets. I talk about consistency is really, really important to all sort of human interaction. And in our town, I would like to see a stop sign at Brandywine and at Darlington on Price Street. I drove here today and watched a very confused pedestrian try to cross and two cars try to, merge closer as we get into that narrow area on Price Street. And it's kind of a mess. So whatever you guys, engineering can do, please do it. I do think that this is actually a question for the engineers and not necessarily the police. I think police input is absolutely important, but I think the final call and the final presentation to PennDOT is from you guys, and that is what's going to make the difference. So please step up and help us. I do live really close to this intersection, so I will let you know that too. But thank you.
Okay. Any questions, Ms. Dorsey?
I have nothing additional. Thank you, Chief. Any other comments from the gallery there? Okay, so at this point, I think. the
Sorry, we do
recommendation
have one
is-
more comment here, Ms.
Oh,
Dorsey.
sorry.
I need to speak. I'm sorry. With all due respect to the police department, I'm so thankful that we have these people in our town. I feel very safe living here. But I do object to the conclusions that have just been presented. I don't think it's fair to establish equivalence between this intersection and other intersections in the borough. Everything's different. What part of town are you talking about? The east side where the university students live? Oh, I turn my engine off and look both ways before I go through an intersection on that side of town. I'll tell you that. That's how crazy it is. The situation, it's a lot different. What I did, and I've told this to a couple of people, is that, go down to Bradford Avenue and drive up Price Street when no one is behind you, unless you want to get rear-ended, and stop at Brandywine, okay? Then proceed to Wayne. It has a tremendous traffic calming effect. Okay, we can't put stop signs in to control speed. That's kind of like that's a real oxymoron. And that's just double thing coming out of PennDOT. But that's something else, okay? My experience basically by doing that was, yes, it has a major traffic calming effect. And it does reduce noise levels. I live one house in from the intersection of Wayne and Price, and yes, it is noisy. It's not that bad, but it's mainly because of our Pennsylvanians that like to come through with their sawed-off exhaust systems that are really causing that problem. Okay, but I really think the installation, of a four-way stop would have a very ameliorating effect and would improve quality of life and actually reduce sound levels while preserving safety on the street. That's it.
I'm going to add one thing because this is me as a resident. I live on Sharpless Street, which is 1 block south of Price. And I live between Brandywine and Wayne, and I have 2 children. And for the first 10 years of their life, I did not let them cross Price Street. There is no trick-or-treating on Price Street. You can run up and down my street. I would prefer you to look both ways, but there is absolutely no way my children were permitted to cross Price Street without either an adult holding their hand. It's dangerous. It's very dangerous. And it's not something that a number of parents are comfortable with. The school district actually had a line on Price Street where the children on the north side went to one school and the children on the south side went to the other school. And that worked because it's a divide. You cannot cross that line. They've shifted that school boundary and it's caused some slight issues because now their friends live right across that divide. My children are old enough they can cross the street now, but it was very scary for a little while there. And I was very, very grateful that I hadn't purchased a home on Price Street. They're beautiful, they're expensive, but there's no way I would want to raise a child on that street with the traffic the way it is. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Reparo. I think we've heard, the concerns of the residents. We have an interim plan to put some incremental
On
changes
Price
in
Street,
place.
as we see in Marshalltown. Marshallton's got a permanent installation on Marshallton, on Route 162. And we see them in other places such as in Malvern on King Road. They are permanent installations. If you're talking about rotating this, I'm not so sure how effective it's going to be to rotate that sign. That's what I
Right.
want to say.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I think we are, pretty far over at this point as well. Ms. Dorsey, I think we missed what you just said. If you could say that one more time for us.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Allen. I was just acknowledging that I think we've heard the concerns loud and clear from the residents. We have agreed to some incremental changes to address, with some urgency and immediacy, and we'll continue to look at this issue. We've got some items here that are on the screen that we can vote on, I guess, during the voting session next week and move forward, and we'll continue to monitor this, and once we have the documented crash data. Is there anything else on this issue we need to discuss?
Wait,
Yeah, sorry, one sec, Ms. Dorsey, there's one more comment.
I'll make it really quick. Obviously, we're not engineers and traffic experts. We're the residents. But we have been doing a lot of research into these so-called warrants, which come from the federal manual, basically imposing on our street the same guidelines that you would use for a state road like 202. It's in the process of being amended now, and there's activists across the country who are working on this. But what I do know is that it's not a single warrant. There's multiple criteria for the warrants. I don't want people to leave the room thinking that it's the crash data, period. It is not. And a lot of those warrants are currently right now out in draft form for, what is it called? Comment. And many states have already told their state departments of transportation, start using this because this is the new reality. And it's a multiple criteria. It's not, you have to have this, you have to have that. And we just hope that the traffic engineers will look at that multiple criteria and not nail onto one decision these accidents that are there, but maybe don't meet the state's level of need. So thank you.
Yeah, and thank you all for coming. I do really, really appreciate the input.
Yeah, thank you. I do think that was understood, that there's multiple criteria to meet the guidelines and that additional work can be done. So I appreciate that. Anything else?
I think we're good.
Okay, thank you. Then I will move on to action items, approving the February minutes for public safety.
Yes.
Yeah,
Thank
those are
you.
good by me.
Any other business?
Doesn't look like it. Nope.
Okay, thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.